Hello, my name is H.A. Pruitt, and I'm the author of the Anathalian series, and I also am an editor. And in this video, I want to talk about an editing tip, kind of a big topic, but still, I want to talk about an editing tip, and today I'm going to talk about dialogue. So first, what is dialogue? Dialogue is when the characters talk. Dialogue is, that's basically it. When the characters are speaking. Usually it's just used in fiction. I'm sure there are exceptions, but it's mostly used in just fiction. So, the big part of the video, how to punctuate dialogue. There's a lot to this. But you are always going to use quotation marks, the double quotation marks, not an apostrophe, the quotation marks to mark when someone starts talking. You put it before your first letter, and then you put it after your end punctuation. You put it when someone's done talking. So you always use those quotation marks. That's what shows the reader somebody is talking here when you use those quotation marks. I didn't put this in my notes, but if you have someone talking and then they quote someone, like the daughter said, my dad said, go to bed, then go to bed would be in these single quotation marks, which are apostrophes on the keyboard. So you would put someone quoting someone, if someone's talking and they quote someone else, you use the single quotation marks within the double quotation marks. But the main thing is you set it off with quotation marks. So the end punctuation, it does go inside the quotation marks, okay? Don't put it on the outside, put it on the inside. You have what they say, you have the end punctuation, and then you have the end quotation marks. And the end punctuation is going to be different depending on a couple different factors. So it might be a comma, it might be a period, it might be an ellipsis, it might be an it might be an M dash. If you want to know about those dashes, I have a different video that's linked below, and you can learn about those dashes, but we're not going to talk about dashes here in depth. So what kind of punctuation do you use with your dialogue? So that depends on how is the dialogue said. So how is your character saying their dialogue? Are they just talking like I'm talking right now? So you could use said. And if you just use said, then you would have maybe a period or a comma. We'll talk about which one you're going to use like that in a second. But if they just say something, then it's going to be a period or a comma. But like if your character is excited and they are yelling, then you want to use an exclamation mark. If your character is asking a question, then you're going to use a question mark. It sounds so simple, but it can be really tricky sometimes, because sometimes characters are wondering, I wonder what we're going to eat today. And you're like, well, is that a period or is that a question mark kind of thing? And that's not a question. And so you still will use the comma or the period, depending on if you use a dialogue tag or dialogue action. But like I said, we'll get to that in a second. But you want to be very careful about if you use a dialogue tag. So a dialogue tag is something like she yelled or he cried. If you're saying your character is yelling or screaming or crying or doing something very loud, don't use a period, because then it'll seem like, well, I thought they were yelling, but I guess they're not yelling. The punctuation you use is going to convey to your reader how your character is saying what they're saying. So if they're yelling, if they're talking loud, it's okay to use an exclamation mark. Sometimes it seems like authors are kind of afraid to use exclamation marks because they might seem like, because they're overused in social media. That's why, because everyone's like, I love this, I love that. I'll use exclamation marks because we're always yelling. And they're overused in social media. But don't be afraid to use them if your character is yelling. Okay? It's okay to use exclamation marks and question marks. So don't be afraid to use those if that's what your character is doing. So the second determining factor of what kind of punctuation do I use, what kind of end punctuation do I use within my quotation marks, is are you using a dialogue tag or are you using dialogue action? So what does that even mean? So a dialogue tag describes the dialogue. So a very simple example would be, hello, he said. And so you have your quotation marks, hello, a comma, quotation marks, and then a lowercase he said. So if it's a tag, it's describing the dialogue. The he said is part of the dialogue in a way, so you don't restart with a capital. You have a lowercase letter. Put an example up here so you can see this is a dialogue tag. The dialogue tag has a comma and a lowercase letter whenever the tag follows the dialogue. If the dialogue tag comes before the dialogue, that would be like he said hello. then you're going to capitalize he, and then after said, you put the comma, and then you have your dialogue, hello, in quotation marks, and you end with a period. The comma connects the dialogue tag. Okay? So if anything I say doesn't make sense, because I'm trying to make this video not too long, and so I'm talking fast. If anything I say doesn't make sense, if you want to ask me examples, like a couple sentences, like how do I punctuate this, please put it in the comments. I'm an editor. I'm happy to help you, you know, and if you're like, I don't care about all these rules, just do it for me, then contact me and maybe I can be your editor. Just ask me and we'll talk about it and we'll see if I'm a good fit. But I hope this makes sense. So that was a dialogue tag. So a dialogue action is a little bit different. Dialogue action will be an action done at or about the same time as the dialogue. So it would be like, hello, she waved. And this, it doesn't describe how she says the dialogue, but it's like she does it while she's talking, or like, hello, she waved. And so it's part of what she does. It's part of her turn to talk. As I tell some people, it's their turn to talk, so you're going to put it in the same paragraph. And so with that, you would say hello, you put hello in the quotation marks, you put your period, and then you would capitalize she, and then say waved. And so it would be its own sentence. They each are their own sentence. They don't connect with a comma. They're each their own sentence. So hello, period, capital she, waved. Again, if this doesn't make sense, please ask in the comments and I'll explain with words. Okay, so that was a dialogue action. All right, so that determines what you're going to use, what kind of punctuation you're going to use within your quotation marks. I keep petting my hair because it's really humid and my hair is sticky and it won't quit fluffing. Okay, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about punctuation within dialogue. Okay, I'm reading my notes, making sure we got all this. Okay, so if a dialogue tag, like I said, you use a comma with a dialogue tag, but if your character, like, hello, he yelled, then you're going to still use an exclamation mark. Don't use the comma, use the exclamation mark. But you will still use the lowercase he if it's a dialogue tag. Same thing with a question. If he's like, what's that? He said, then use your question mark and a lowercase he. Or he asked. It would be he asked. We'll get to the said thing in a second. But I'm just using said because said is an easy example. So, dialogue tags, you connect it with that lowercase he if it comes after, or whatever pronoun you're using or name. If it is a proper noun, you capitalize your proper nouns. Like George, you know, hello, George said, capitalize George's name. You don't lowercase George's name ever. Always capitalize proper nouns. Okay. Yeah! Sorry, my baby's talking to me. Okay. So, punctuating dialogue when an action interrupts dialogue. So this is something different. We're shifting gears. So this is something that you probably won't use a lot, but when it comes up, it's like, oh my goodness, how do I punctuate this? And it's kind of tricky. So if it's usually used whenever the character, you're trying to be like intense with it. And so here's my example. The example will help. So the example is, I told you, she raised a warning finger to stop. And so, I told you will be in the quotation marks because she says it. But she raised a warning finger is the action she does. And this is not a dialogue tag. And so it's not like, she raised a warning, I told you, she said, to stop. That would be a dialogue tag, and you would use the comma within the quotation marks to set off that dialogue tag. A dialogue tag can interrupt dialogue, and you put a comma on either side of your dialogue tag to show that it goes with both sides of the dialogue. So I hope I'm not getting confusing. That, if it's a dialogue tag, it would read, I told you, comma, quotation marks, then lowercase, she said, and then another comma, and then your quotation marks to stop, period, end quotation marks. So that's how that would be if you use a dialogue tag within the middle of dialogue. But what I'm talking about, the action interrupting the dialogue, is different. So if your character's talking and they pause in the middle of a sentence to do something and then go back to what they were saying, and it's the same sentence, then you are going to set that action off with M dashes, the long dashes. And so I'm going to put an example up here for you to see, and I'll read it again. I told you, she raised a warning finger to stop. So yeah, I'm a mom. I took that from that. Yeah, so that is how you interrupt dialogue. And there aren't spaces between the em dashes and the quotation marks or the action that happens in between the dialogue. Again, if this doesn't make sense, ask for an example in the comments and I will write it out for you. And also, so this is the last thing I want to say, a note about the verb said. So there's nothing wrong with the word said. He said, she said, George said. There's nothing wrong with using the word said. If your character's just saying something, use the word said, and that's completely fine. However, if you use said just over and over and over again, any word you use over and over and over again in your manuscript, repetition, unless it's a children's book for very young children, is just going to create, if you get in a steady rhythm and do like this and keep talking, any kind of repetition is going to make your reader a little less engaged. It's just like whenever you're in a car and you hear that of the engine, that repetition just kind of lulls your mind into a sleepy state. And that's the same thing when people read. If it's repetition of sentence structure, repetition of words, repetition of anything, that makes the reader a little less engaged. So try to think about how your character says something. And so right now I could say, the editor said this, the editor said that, and I am saying it, but I'm also explaining it. I'm also talking about it. I'm also, I'm explaining a lot, and so I don't have a whole lot of verbs on I'm not good at thinking things on the spot. I didn't write down how to explain about this. But just, I'm talking in different ways. Sometimes I explain, sometimes I say, sometimes I go into depth about, use different verbs, because your verbs and your words in general, when you write, show your reader what's going on. And so if you just said, he said this and she said that, then they can't see into your head what the characters are doing. They're reading to know what the characters are doing. So if you said, he said, she said, they're going to think that they're having a conversation like this, and they're just saying things and they're just talking. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But just think about, is that what my characters are doing? Or are they trying to explain to each other? Have they been holding something back and then they divulge it to one another? Are they excitedly blurting it out? Are they talking really fast? Try to think about how your character is saying that, and use a more expressive verb. I try to encourage authors to use more expressive verbs than said if the character is doing something. Sometimes I read books and it's like, oh no, the character said. And oh no, the character said. That's not very expressive, but oh no, the character suddenly cried. Or some people say don't use suddenly, but I don't think anything's wrong with suddenly. Oh no, this character suddenly cried out. Use those different verbs to show your reader how the character is saying that, to make your reading just so much more engaging, so much more realistic, so much more vibrant. So that's all I have to say about dialogue. Again, if anything I said was confusing, if you have questions, if you don't care about any of this and want to just hire me as an editor so I'll do it for you, please leave a comment and I will answer your questions. I'll help you with examples. I won't do your whole book in the comments, but I will help you with your sentences. If you have some ones that you're like, this is a tricky sentence, please just leave it in the comments and I'll help you with it. If you have any comments, any questions, please ask, please share this video, please like this video, and thank you very much for watching. Bye! If you want to know more about Anna Thalian or H.A. Pruitt, please follow me on Instagram at H.A. Pruitt. You can find me on Amazon as an Amazon author, H.A. Pruitt. Please watch my YouTube channel and all my cool videos on my channel, H.A. Pruitt Anna Thalian. You can find me on the Facebook page, H.A. Pruitt Anna Thalian. You can follow me on Goodreads by the name H.A. Pruitt and the book Anna Thalian, or you can go to my website where so much cool stuff about Anna Thalian is. The website is hapruitt.com. Tripped on my shoelace. Oh, that's too. Yeah, I locked you out of the room, didn't I? I got a baby gate. Okay. You have your baby on. How do you have your baby? Where's the cord? Oh my goodness.